What were Jesus' last words? Go out into the whole world and make disciples. This Catholic podcast will help you respond to that call and invitation from our Lord.
Together we'll learn from leaders in the new evangelization, those out there on the front lines witnessing to God's love, and discuss tips that you can implement today.
So what are you waiting for?
Go make disciples.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a great guest with us today. His name is just Gomer, or your official Christian name, Michael Gormley. So we're really excited to have Michael with us. He is the co-host of Catching Foxes podcast and works at one of the largest Catholic churches in the U.S., doing great things out there. And since this show is all about evangelization and helping you do a better job of bringing the gospel to people, we thought what better way to do that than by interviewing somebody who's doing this in his personal life and also in his professional life, helping people come to know the love of God in parish life. So I got to think, for people who work for the church, we have really great airplane conversations. So first on for you, when you sit down on an airplane, or like wherever you sit down to travel with anymore, I know that's not a big thing, but people say like, "Oh, what do you do for a living? What do you talk about, and what's that like?"
Yeah, so it depends on how much I really want to get into things. I also travel a lot and give talks, right? So half the time I'm on the plane, I'm done with human people and I just want to go to bed. So or fall asleep on the plane. So what I say depends on that. So I'll say, I teach. But when I say, I'll never forget this story. This woman goes, "So what do you do?" And she was sitting at the window. She's a middle-aged woman, very nice. We were having a lovely conversation before the plane even backed up from the runway or whatever, and or jetway. And she said, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm the coordinator of evangelization at St. Anthony of Padua Roman Catholic Church in the Woodlands, Texas." And she literally, she just goes, "Oh." And she slowly jerked her head to the side, and she even turned her shoulder to me and then never spoke to me again for the rest of the flight. And it was like a 3-hour flight.
Yeah, we're used to most stories not panning out like that, right? It's like someone has a revelation talking to you, a conversion, but no, that happens too. People just don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it was awesome. I've had my fair share of apologetics conversations. I got into a 2.5-hour debate flying from Fort Lauderdale with a guy on Sola Scriptura. That was fun. And then I had one story where I was sitting in the very back of the plane, and this guy was going off on religion, and he goes, "So, are you religious?"
Yeah. You should ask that question first.
Yeah. And then when we got off the plane, he was like, "You have totally changed my opinion about religious people." And I was like, "Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. And he's like, "I hate you all even more now." So no, I'm just kidding.
It's worse.
Plot twist. It's awful.
Oh, that's great. No, when you can really suck it up though and not say that, we get those like knee-jerk reactions of like, all the YouTube video taglines of like, watch this, watch so and so crush this person, like crush atheist, crush agnostic. And it's like, that's probably not actually the best way to win souls for Christ.
No, it is not. No, it is not.
Makes for great YouTube titles.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you work as a consultant and you go around giving a lot of talks. But one of the things that, actually I'll get to that question next. When you go and work at a parish, because the audience we have in mind really is parish leaders, like people who are there in the trenches trying to make this happen. What's your goal? Like, what do you say? Okay, here's what I want to accomplish, or do you let them state that?
Well, I feel like when I work with parishes, the idea is the church already kind of has a goal, right? And that goal is the sanctification of the human person, right? Every person, to bring them into holiness with Christ. And one of the things that I have found, I think I kind of find it 3 ways. You have one experience of Catholicism where it's kind of like the cultural Catholicism, the mindless acceptance of this thing that I do week in and week out. And then you have the other version of Catholicism, which is the brutal the brutal annoyance with things of sacraments. It's more like an evangelicalism within the church. Like, people are very faithful, but they don't see the point or purpose of the sacraments. And finally, you have the people who kind of like both, right? The idea of, this is my life, this is what it means to be a part of the church, devotions or whatever. And then people who, love the sacraments, but sometimes those people do not understand Christ, and they don't have this vital contact with the Lord, with our Lord and Savior. And so my job kind of is to feel where people are at, and to bring them into a living contact with Jesus Christ through the sacraments, through Scripture, through personal prayer, through the liturgy, and not invalidate or dismiss any one of those, right? So that's really where I feel like that's the point. So when I work with parishes, my goal is to kind of identify where that's not happening, where there isn't a reciprocity between faith and the sacraments, right? And it's exhausting in the sense that everyone thinks they have it right, including me. But there are so many gaps in and I don't even know how to solve all of that, but there are so many gaps in the way we present the faith to our own parishioners that the goal is to try to figure those out and really address those wounds in the body of Christ.
Yeah. As you're talking about that, one of the things that strikes me as a gap is just the language we use. I think we're really good at holding on to what we've been given, but sometimes we hold on to like cultural expressions of the faith that aren't, like, they're not the same as the faith, but we act as if they are. And so even the way we word things, I know the new directory for catechesis has a great line in there that calls for us to kind of find new language to talk about the same things. And I think we've all been in the situation where we're having a conversation with somebody and we're using the same words that mean very different things. And if we want to, I use this word somewhat lightly, if we want to win, then we have to use the language of the people we're talking with so that they can come to understand the truth with the tools they already have. Is that one of the things you think you've seen that when you said we don't even necessarily know how to communicate well with our own Catholics or the faithful in the pews?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is we talk past each other mainly through assumptions. We assume so much within our own congregation. We don't realize that, maybe about 10% are just straight up skeptics, even if they come once a month, once a week. We don't take this stuff into account. Now, COVID's a weird situation because people have their obligations lifted and blah blah blah. But the experience of a lot of Catholics is, sometimes the most devout Catholics only go to Mass once a month, and it doesn't compute for a lot of us who are devout and faithful, and we love it. And so there are barriers. Like when people say, like, I'm a practicing Catholic, that phrase alone has 5 trillion different interpretations. And so
right.
One of the things is not just using the same words that have different meanings, but also making assumptions and starting off really on the wrong the wrong footing, right? And we really do. So for instance, I taught a class of 15 confirmation students, and 2 knew who Moses was or have ever heard of the 10 commandments. Like 2 out of 15.
Yeah.
High school sophomores. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, kids, I want you to go home and just punch your parents in the face, right? Because they have failed you. They are utter failures when it comes to teaching you and handing on the faith. People in the culture know what that means, who are stone cold atheists, and I find this all over the place. So
yeah.
There's a lot of assumptions that we need to stop making.
Yeah, not assuming we're in a Christian culture anymore. I have a good friend who's a priest who was asked to speak at a community college about, it was in Orlando, Dan, about just being a priest and Christianity. And he said he was answering the most basic questions about the faith. Things you would have never imagined people were going to ask. But yeah, and I wonder why. There's so many reasons why that's happening, but it's just the reality. And I think sometimes in ministry too, we want to brush over those things or pretend they don't exist, but we need to be real about the situation in order to really help people. We can't just gloss over it.
Yeah.
It seems like we kind of, maybe I just wasn't paying attention well enough, but woke up and all of a sudden America is so unfamiliar with what religion means, what religion's for, let alone like the doctrine of Catholicism or the reality of Christianity. And as you pointed out, so I worked in a high school for a long time, and I knew a lot of those kids. They'd come into my class and they couldn't formulate any of the 10 Commandments. They wouldn't really be able to tell you any of the major figures from biblical history, other than like maybe Moses. But I mean, you start asking any questions about, well, can you name anybody other than, like Moses, Abraham, maybe Adam and Eve? Most people know Adam and Eve. But it's like the world, at least our world here in America, became mission territory really, really quickly. And I don't know how it happened. And I'm not that interested in how it happened. I'm more interested in how we respond to it and saying, like, okay, as you said, we no longer can, nor should we assume that people who are coming to Mass have any familiarity with the person of Jesus.
Right.
So one of the other things I wanted to talk about was, you said, I really like this. You pointed to speakers who sometimes come in without a plan for like what's going on after their talk. And it's almost like it's the silver bullet mentality. Like, oh, if we just bring in like this Catholic speaker, then we're going to be good to go. And that'll change the culture of our parish. But it's almost like they don't even really take human growth and human learning into consideration, that we learn gradually and we change gradually. And that's done in the context of community. So when you work with a parish to try to build joyful community, do you have any recommendations that you would share, or like, what's your secret?
Yeah. So I do a lot of parish missions in a normal year. And especially obviously during Lent and Advent and stuff like that. But one of the things that I realize with parishes is, and I get this all the time, people will say like, oh my gosh, we love you. So I have a podcast called Every Knee Shall Bow on top of Catching Fox. I'm about to launch another one. And Every Knee Shall Bow is all on evangelization. And so I'll have people who will literally call me up and they'll say, hey, I love the show. We want you to be a speaker. And I'll say, great. What's the topic? What's going on? What are your parish needs? And they'll be like, you can talk about anything. You can talk about anything. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, I mean, I can. I would happily talk to you about some Marvel movies, but what do your people need? What do you need? What have you been doing? So I call it missional continuity, where I ask them, what does this event, what precedes it and comes after it, and how does this event, whether it's a parish mission or a talk, actually carry the ball further towards the goal, right? And most people do not have an answer for it. It's like, well, it's Lent, so we do a parish mission. Okay, what is going to lead people into that parish mission? Like, just logistically, why would a non Kool-Aid drinker come to that parish mission, right? Usually parish mission pulls in 200 of the top people who do everything anyways, right? And so it's like, okay, why would someone come to that? Well, most of the time it's like, well, it's an event that we're offering and it's Lent and that's it. So I mean, even if it's attached to something like a penance service, like there has to be some sort of thing that is physical in the world that occurs around before and after the event. And so I always encourage penance services. I encourage, at the very least, have an instructional mass or something beautiful, or mass of dedication or whatever. And because I found that a lot of people, that we don't know what we're aiming towards. So we just have thing after thing after thing after thing. And that's where I think there's a lot of danger. And it's hard to build a joyful community, right? A community centered on Jesus Christ, carrying the gospel forward to people who don't know it. I mean, there's so much power and beauty in that. But most of we don't have strategic planning when it comes to this stuff. And I just find that over and over again, parishes are like, I mean, they say it all the time. Well, you can talk about whatever you want. And I'm just like, I know you think that's awesome, but it's not, right? I don't ever want to be a celebrity speaker.
Right.
Or
it may be awesome to you, the planner, but what's going to be awesome to the people that you want there? Like you were saying, Michael, I mean, we think so much about what we want to do, but marketing 101, to bring in a bit of the business world, is we need to think about the people we want to reach. What do they want to hear about? So I'm curious, when you get that call for like a mission talk, do you ever spend time with those parishes, then helping them maybe in other workshops or venues refine their overall mission and vision and where they're going overall to help what you're doing fit into that? Or is it hard to get those conversations?
No, it actually, you find, okay, so when I talk with people about doing parish missions, one of the things that I tell them is, I don't charge you for the gospel. right? You're not paying for a talk. You're paying for my time there. Okay. So if I'm here for 3 nights to do 3 missions, I don't want to be at a hotel the whole day, right? Like, let me do a staff retreat. When was the last time you had a staff retreat, right? And it's not going to cost anyone any extra, right? Because you're just paying for my time. You already got my time. I'm here. So, although I do have to put some caveats onto that because people have really taken advantage of that. Like, whoa, unlimited talks. And I'm like, yeah. I had to do, there has been multiple times where they're like, listen, the school can't have an assembly. So you're going to give the same talk 8 times in a row. And I'm like,
oh my gosh. Wow.
okay. Okay. And then by the time I'm at talk number 4, I'm like, did I already say this? Did I already say this? Everything I'm saying, did I already say this? So, but that's one of the, honestly, like, that's one of the things that I always try to do is like, okay, great. I get to evangelize the parishioners. What about the parish staff? What about the pastor? What about the clergy? What about, what is happening in the area? So oftentimes, I got youth ministry roots, so, which is why I'm so plucky. But the idea of it is they will send me then to their high school ministry if I come in on a Sunday, usually in missions like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So I'll go to the youth group before mass, there'll be a mass, and then I'll do the parish mission after or something like that. I'm always asking for more things to do when I'm there, right? And I don't understand the just limiting a mission field. Like, okay, we want you to talk on the grace of Jesus Christ. Okay, to who? To people who show up. Okay, so just the, empty nesters who are going to come to a parish mission. Why not do the same thing for the high school students, for the retreats, or for the parish staff, whatever.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them will take me up on that. A lot of them do.
I really like that approach because it's more comprehensive. Not just the, like, let me work with everyone. I mean, like, evangelizing the parish staff, that seems like it could be one of the most fruitful things you do in conjunction with a parish mission, so that they get it.
One time I had a deacon and I gave this talk on the Sermon on the Mount. And then I asked them to go and just sit with the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5-7, and just pray through it and just spend time in prayer. And I gave them like 45 minutes to go do that. Deacon walks up to me and he goes, hey, real quick, like, I know how to do the liturgy and stuff, but I don't know how to pray.
Wow.
And I was like, I wanted to choke him, honestly. Like, you're a deacon and you're telling me, and he goes, and I don't think most of our staff does either.
Wow.
So could you give us like, maybe just give us like a 10-minute talk on how to pray? And I feel like choking people like that because, that person should resign. They really should. Everyone who does not have a prayer life and works full-time in pastoral ministry, you need to quit. You are the problem of why the church is dying, right? And when I saw that, obviously, actually, that's not true. I did say that, but
you didn't choke him.
I didn't choke him. I didn't choke him out. I choked him a little, just to let him know that I could.
There we go.
Right. Right. I'm like, all right, you ready for a submission hold? And I got him from behind, and I was like,
you gave him a noogie and you let him off. And
Moderation for the win.
Well, I think it's a great testament, though, to the importance of outside perspectives, consultants, if you will. I spent some time in business consulting, and sometimes in organizations, there's a hesitancy to bring someone else in. We've got it all figured out. Everything's okay. Yeah. But an outside perspective is super valuable. I forget which Old Testament account it was, but that I think it might have been Saul that's bringing in advisors. He brings in advisors, or even when David comes and sees what's going on with the Philistines, says, I can take on Goliath. It took that outside perspective because all those men, though much larger than David, were afraid of him. So, for someone like you, you're swimming in evangelization all the time. When you come in, it's just like, boom, we need to talk about Jesus. It's about Jesus. That can be such a good wake-up call, not just for the people in the pews, but for the staff, because people forget that all the time. I mean, how many times have we met folks in ministry that are just exhausted? Yep. They haven't been to mass themselves. It's scary. It's terrifying. So yeah, the value of an outside speaker perspective, not just for the people in the pews, but everyone involved, can be super helpful now and then.
Yeah, totally.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, once we're done with this, can you teach me how to pray?
Can't show you virtually.
No, it'll cost you. I charge per minute when it comes to teaching how to pray.
Gotcha,
I saw that was in the asterisk bottom of your website. That's right.
That's funny. So, this is, I think, a good segue. There's a lot going on in parish life. Justin just mentioned it. People who work in parishes can often be exhausted because they wear so many hats, and they're asked to do a lot and to be really good at a lot of things. Like, oh, so you've got a bachelor's in religious studies or a bachelor's in theology from a great Catholic school. We'd also like you to be really good at marketing and event planning and human resources and management and leadership and all of these other things as well.
Are you younger than 45? You're now in charge of parish social media.
IT, you're the IT guy. I think each of us have probably been the IT guy at our parish or events and stuff. Yeah.
One of the things that so when Justin and I were writing our book, Go Make Disciples, we talked about sacred cows and these things that we love in parish life, but that really aren't bearing fruit. And I think we ended up not really bringing this up because we probably couldn't find a way to talk about it without sounding too cheeky and dismissive. And we wanted to strike the right tone and not be like those punk millennials who are writing a book trying to tell people what to do.
That's why we have podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we can, just another opportunity. But what are some of and this might not be so much a question of like, what do you see going on, and more so like, how do you assess the things at your parish that aren't bearing fruit, and how do you like get comfortable? So whether you're the pastor, you see it, or you're an employee and you see it, there's things that we just need to stop doing because they're so tangential to the mission of the gospel.
Yeah. So a lot of the sacred cows that I see, they develop because of a mentality that is very easy and very understandable. And the mentality is typically this: this worked for me. It changed my life. It brought me to faith. It gave me a love of the church, whatever. So therefore, everyone has to do it right now. And the development, whether it's a retreat ministry, which can be very powerful, right? We have an Acts community, retreat teams. Acts is very huge. I'm sure Justin's probably big. Victoria, I mean, we love it. And from Acts, we launched Colby Prison Ministries at our parish, and I'm very involved in the prison ministries. We have Bible studies and stuff. And the sad thing is, I have a lot of people who are parishioners that are also pretty incredible Catholics, steady volunteers who really hate me because I see that what they create are systems that perpetuate what they did 10 years ago. And so, like, for instance, you have Bible studies that have been occurring with the same group of people doing the same thing for years, and they think that's formation. And it really bothers me because and it's funny because I've gotten in so many arguments with people about this, but like the longest running Bible study, I took over their classroom and turned it into our room for preparation for this program called Inclusion, which is modified RCIA for devout Protestants who want to become Catholic, right? So we dispense with a lot of stuff. It's a largely apologetics and other stuff. And I mean, they were enraged. And they're like, but we want to study our faith. I'm like, I'm not worried about you. You guys get it. This is your social club. You're eating donuts and hanging out and this is the second time you've studied this book with this, series and all this stuff. Well, they just came out with a new version. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're on repeat. Go to the food pantry, right? So I see that the sacred cows often hit people in their comfort zone, hit people where it mattered greatly for them. But here's the funny thing. They're not inviting people into their Bible study. They've locked it out. Like, if it really mattered so much, then the 12 people that you've been meeting with for 7 years in a row, maybe you should be actively inviting new people. And that's the sacred cow generator for me. I'll never forget, this guy came up to me and he goes, "You ever been on an Acts retreat?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "You need to go. It'll change your life." And I go, "No, it won't." And he looked at me and he goes, "What?" And I go, "I love my Catholic faith. I have advanced degrees in theology. I have a very strong Catholic community. I pray every day and I go to mass often. What am I missing? And he was like, "Well, you should still go." Now, I did go, and it was awesome. It was great. And a lot of those men had incredible community. Their Catholic community kind of formed from that. But it was like everyone thinks it's a silver bullet because it worked for them.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So it did not change your life.
I mean, I didn't get a lot of sleep. I can't get that back. I drank some terrible coffee. My wife almost murdered me because I was gone for so many days. So stuff like that.
Retreat coffee's rough. That is pretty bad.
like used Folgers. Like that's what it tastes like. It's already been through hot water twice. Why not a fourth time?
I think there's definitely some Catholic men's clubs and groups out there that run water through their grounds multiple times. Like I remember going out to somewhere for a workshop we were setting up, and somebody was cleaning the old coffee maker, and they told me that last time they did that, they were with, and I don't even want to mention the group's name because I want to be nice to our venerable Catholic groups, but there's an old guy from that group who saw this person cleaning. I didn't say that. Cleaning out the coffee maker. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing? That's got still like we could still run that through 2 or 3 more times."
Oh, so it's true. You saw it. Like
bad
coffee and early mornings, like being tired and drinking bad coffee is just part of being Catholic.
Yeah, I had a guy in the army.
One of the sacred cows, maybe.
Yeah. No, it should taste terrible. Carry your cross.
Penance.
Yeah, this guy was like, I was in Afghanistan in the army, and our coffee was about this level. And he's like, "That you live in a rich suburban parish. Let's take it up a notch."
Right. You can do a little bit better. Let's get some single origin in here.
Yeah, indeed.
Man, there's so many fun places we could go from there. Just thinking about, I mean, you said they haven't invited anybody in. Like a Bible study with 12 people that's been going for 7 years should be a Bible study with 1,000 people.
Happens all the time. And so, Michael, I saw on your website you do book reviews. I might ask you to do one of ours. I'm nervous to send it to you, but I'd love your feedback on it, because one thing we talked about is we called it it's something from borrowed from the business world a little bit, the ministry life cycle. And we intentionally put it in there to show, hey, so how do you know when it's time to hand off your ministry? Because every ministry leader needs to have that in the back of their mind, because I think what happens too is we hold on to these things. We love our position and our esteem or whatever. But Jesus, he had the disciples drop the nets and follow him. And, one of my favorite lines of the Gospels in John, when Peter's like, what about this other person, what they're doing? Jesus says, you must follow me. Don't worry about John. You must follow me. So any words of wisdom and how to help people realize when it might be time to, pass it on or let go of something? Sounds like you've had the ability to have those conversations. Well, sometimes it takes a sternness too, a frankness.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I used to be the coordinator of adult faith formation, now I'm the director of evangelization. And one of the reasons why I fought to become a director, which means I have no layperson over me, right? It's just the pastor at this point, is because some people have a mentality that if it's not causing positive harm, don't just start a new thing. Don't get rid of the old thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe sometimes we have different definitions of positive harm. So I have a mega church, right? Like 7,000 families, probably closer to 5,000 families that are somewhat active in the life of the church on a weekly or monthly basis. But the ministries that we have tons of ministries, and you'll see ministries that'll go from 15 to 12 to 11 to 8 to 6, right? And I'm sure they're discouraged, and their approach is, we need to advertise more, give me more bulletin space. And I have that conversation. I was like, no, maybe it's dead, right? Maybe it's dead. Maybe the context is wrong. A beige classroom on a Monday after morning mass might not be where you're going to hit your core audience of Divine Mercy book readers, or for the Epistle of James Bible study, or whatever it might be, like literally anything, right? Maybe the best context is, like, we have a group of guys, they meet at Brooklyn Bagel, right? And they go there and they hang out and they drink coffee and they eat bagels, and they talk about the readings for that weekend, the upcoming Sunday. I don't care about how big that group is, and neither do they, right? They're not there. They're there because that is their community that's their fraternity. Okay. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Like, what is the point of the group? Are you trying to impact the parish as big as possible? Are you trying to create a prayer group? A prayer group is probably better done either in the church, in the chapel, or in your home. Yeah. Don't go to and it's not just like, hey, your group is your thing has clearly died and you need to own it, right? It's also that, like, maybe the context for what you're trying to do is completely off. right? And the other thing is, we do these things in parishes where we're in competition with each other a lot. And at a certain level, it makes sense. If you're going to disrupt your Bible study, it might as well be by another Bible study that you're doing, rather than Oprah's book club, a neighboring non-denoms Bible study, whatever it is. At the same time, what we end up doing is we have a million different places for our parishioners to quote unquote start here. And it doesn't make any sense. Oh, start here for this ministry, but what about that ministry? What about, I don't know anything. I need to know something. Where should I begin? And they open up the bulletin, and if you're like my parish, you have 15 places where you can be. So it's just confusion. And so they don't know what to do, right? And my big thing for a lot of people, Catholics don't pray, Catholics don't know the scripture, Catholics don't know the doctrine, and Catholics don't have community, right? So it's hard to be a people like Acts of the Apostles, chapter 2, verse 42. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of the bread, and to the prayers. Most people don't do any of those four, let alone dial it up to 100%. And so I created this thing called the Start Here series, where if I have a couple brain cells I can rub together, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a 3-week series, 1 hour each, 30 minutes after, on prayer. So I'll do, if you don't know how to pray, come to this class. I'll teach you how to pray in 3 weeks. You can have a broad understanding of Christian prayer, an experience of praying in community as well as individually, and then you can go and, if you want, join a prayer group, join the Divine Mercy Cenacle, go to the men's prayer breakfast, whatever a prayer breakfast is. I don't know why there are so many prayer breakfasts, but they're there. Go and join it, and you won't feel like an idiot. And a lot of people don't want to admit that they've built everything using Focus's language of win, build, send. Everything is built. Everything is built.
Yeah.
Right? All the money is in build. Everything is in build. No one wants to send. I was talking with the Catholic publisher recently about doing a book on evangelization, and I don't know if you guys see this, but the idea is, they said, no, there's no money in evangelization. Why? Because people don't want to go out. They don't want to leave the comfort zone into the unknown, right? And people who need to be evangelized, they're not going to Catholic publishers being like, where's a Bible study on Mark, right? So
yeah.
So they just market it to the people who already get it, but that creates this vicious feedback loop. So now let me say, I hope the best for your book. But the idea is, we need to be intentional. If you're in charge of a parish or a diocese, you need to be intentional about getting people to move up into leadership positions and then move out into evangelization. And if they're not doing it, shut that program down. You got to shut it down.
I wish you could have been a little more clear on how you feel about
that. Yeah, well, the problem is you have people be like, well, just do a new thing. And it's like, okay. And I did that for 4 years. And I'm like, well, now we have a whole bunch of new things that are kind of going nowhere, because you have a bunch of people who are believers, right? They're believing in their program, their ministry, their mission. COVID has been a blessing for me. I freaking love what it did to my parish, because all that stuff hit reset. And now, and we're able to do one thing as a parish. And that's kind of my simplified church model, right? Like, what is the one thing we can do for everyone, right? Okay, we're going to have a liturgy here. Let me say this, and then I'll stop talking. God, I love my own voice so much.
I know the feeling.
But the idea of doing one thing really well and simplifying it, Albert Einstein had this phrase where he said, simplify a thing as much as possible and no further, right? Like, you have to get it down to its basics in order for those basics to be really strong and do the thing that it exists to do. And I mean this, like, I was on a retreat once where the people putting on the retreat spent about 12 extra hours 2 days before, volunteers themselves, doing stuff that didn't matter. And let's use a business term, ROI, right? The return on investment. They poured hours of labor right before the 14-hour all-day retreat, right? Hours of labor into, and okay, so I would never do this, but making the green room for speakers and musicians look beautiful, right? So the tins filled with perfectly organized granola bars, right? It took them 45 minutes to organize all this stuff and make it look beautiful. And everyone's on the keto diet, man. Not a single person ate a granola bar. They didn't even go into that room. No one did.
Wow.
And so I was like, if I found out, I would have been like, just put a couple boxes Have you seen Christian musicians? We're the grubbiest people on the. We come in, we're like, oh, what is that? That half-eaten donut in the trash can looks good to me, right? Like you don't need to make it pretty, but that's their heart. The hostess, wanting to bless, and that was a thing. But I was like, guys, we're at 0 hour. There's no return on investment in this.
Yeah,
stuff. So, but people don't want to admit it, and it's their thing, and whatever.
I think I'm going to call you and maybe have you talk to someone I live with next time we have guests coming over, and we're figuring out what we need to do to get ready for the guests.
Yeah. Where are you located, Dan? I can't remember.
I live in the Orlando diocese, so I'm
Orlando. You guys you're the most open state on the face of the earth.
Well, not anymore. You guys are.
Yeah,
Texas, Florida.
Yeah, you got tired of being second place. You're like, all right, no more masks, no more anything.
How is Florida man ahead of us? How is Florida man ahead of us? We're Texas, dang it.
I'm so proud of having Florida man. Like we have such great stories. I don't know how we get it. Like but I'm happy with it.
But you get it often.
We do. So there were the two other really interesting. I mean, there's probably like a million interesting questions I could ask you, but you just brought up the simple church model, and my parish is a mega parish in a lot of senses. It's similar to yours in size, and I wanted to ask if you could talk about using that model and some of the fruit, the difficulties, everything about it.
You ever heard of Lifeway Christian Bookstore?
Yeah.
Okay, so the head of that bookstore wrote a book called Simple Church. And I went through it and I read it a whole bunch of times, and parts of it really, really resonated with me. And it's so funny because as a Catholic reading evangelical books about church growth and all this stuff, we don't know, because a lot of people will read these books like Purpose Driven Church by Rick Warren, who wrote Purpose Driven Life, right? And Andy Stanley's book Deep and Wide, and different evangelical churches. We don't realize that they're actually attached to an entire ecclesiology and ethos that surrounds it, and that's actually something that's very contradictory to Roman Catholic principles. And so one of the things that I began doing in looking at the simple church model was what gems are here that really, really, really can operate across ecclesiological borders, right? Because my big fear, and I heard this in certain parish movements, parish reform renewal movements, I was like the most zealous campaigner for him, because I knew what we were doing was broken, but I didn't see the way out. And I would get a book and I would read it, and then I would go to the conference, and I was so repulsed at how the church implemented it, because they just took it was like a Catholic shell on a non-denom church. And you want to talk about jettisoning the reciprocity between faith and sacraments. I mean, a lot of these parish renewal movements, they have so bought into the non-denominational church growth model that they don't even see how its roots are deeply anti-Catholic. So I say that because reading through that book, I read it so many times because I'm like, okay, what can I pull away from this? Not just what's a litmus test, but like, how can it really be incorporated into the Catholic life? And a part of my research was actually going back to things like the Code of Canon Law, the Catechism, or the decrees on from the Council of Trent, right? And it's actually like, what did the church view the role of the parish, like canonically? Like, what are we do? What do we do? Christe Fidelis laity. What is the role of the laity in cooperation with the pastors and the local church, the diocese? And I began looking at this thing, and it really began to bother me, because almost none of the key principles interfere with any of that stuff. But very rare is it where you have a church that implements these things. So, the strategic and tactical thinking about programs and mission and faith formation. Like, here's principle number 1, bedrock foundational principle of the church. Adults are the primary objects of catechesis.
Yep.
Go to your average Catholic parish and tell me what they offer for adults. That's not the RCIA.
Yeah.
Right? It's horrible. Okay. What about prayer formation? Right? If you do not pray, you are damned. Okay. So Catechism of the Catholic Church cites St. Alphonsus Liguori: those who pray every day are surely saved. Those who do not are surely damned. Right. So that's a pretty epic phrase that I just read to my parish staff workers the other day. But when we think about this, like, honestly, Do we equip our parishioners to pray on their own and to pray with the liturgy and the sacraments? Do we do that? Like,
No.
when do we do that? When I hear homilies on prayer, they just assume you pray. Right? They don't address the difficulties. Like, just get the Catechism of the Catholic Church, go to part 4 and read the Battle of Prayer, right? And that section alone, I think, if you just read that to your congregation, you would advance their prayer lives by leaps and bounds. But the most common question I get from parishioners who are raising a family and they got kids in high school is, how do I pray? How do I pray? It's the most common question. And you would think, wow, we're a church. We should do, or moral formation. How do I do this? They don't even know where to begin. And so the simplified church model, I wish I could say, so I spent a lot of time developing it, and then I began trying to implement it when I do parish missions, right? So what's your missional continuity? How does it connect with what comes before and after? How can I serve your parish staff? Can I do a retreat? I began to do all this stuff, and I realized, like, my daily job where I'm trying to implement this stuff, it just overwhelmed me, and it kind of became one of those grapes on the vine that got left behind, like, in terms of, like, because I really want to develop it into a helpful model for DREs to think about what should and shouldn't happen at a parish, right? And for pastors, right? People who are in charge of formation and liturgy and worship. So the idea of the simplified church model is people need to know where to start if they don't know anything. They need to know what next steps are, and they need to clearly understand that you're not just here to learn a bunch of stuff. You're here to follow Jesus, meaning to do something with your life, right? Not just believe a list, right? It's not about memorizing the creed and you're done. It's not even about agreeing with the creed or the church's moral teaching on contraception, right? It's not about that. It's about following in the way of the Lord Jesus. Am I equipping people to follow in the way of the Lord Jesus? And most Catholic parishes are not houses of prayer or formation in prayer, which neither is mine, but I want it to be, right? And we're marching on that model, right?
Well, I think, everything you just shared made me think of another concept that's big in the business world right now, of customer experience.
Yeah.
But, how easy is it when we're interested in a company or a product to find the product we want, add it to our cart, and check out and move on with our lives?
Yeah.
Coming to a church, maybe even a large church, especially, I'd say any parish, it can be so overwhelming for someone that hasn't been around the church in a while. You have some parishes that may not even offer online registration. So you're coming in, who do I talk to? What do I do? And I like to say that Catholics were the best secret keepers, because it's almost like you've got to get to know the situation. Then you can find, here's the Bible study. Here's the thing I can do. But what you're talking about, Michael, is just making it really easy to find, where's my place in all this, and how do I take that next step towards Christ, wherever I am in the journey, and then go from there. So the more we can simplify that for people. I love what you shared about Albert Einstein, because good marketing, good process design, even, it all comes back to simplicity, because that people don't have time nowadays to sort through lots of information. They've got to know, what do I do? I want to pray. What do I do? Where do I go?
So and you this even goes to your emails. I tried to, there's a time when you despair of working for the church, right? You're just so demoralized.
Never.
I got ideas, man. I got ideas. And so I would daydream about working in the private sector, and one of them was doing content strategy and content management for websites and companies and stuff like that. And so I started reading some books and all these things on these initiatives. And this one guy was talking about, he said, we took an infrared camera and put it on 1,000 people's monitors and observe their eye movement and facial, recognition, and the heat that would generate across their face when they were excited or whatever. And he said, we had them read thousands of websites, like go through and do the content. And he said, people read in an F pattern. They quickly scan down the body, and then they go across to the headlines, things in bold, things in bullets. And I realized, just think about when you read email that is sent to multiple people. You scan it, and if something really sticks out to you, then you might invest time in reading it. But so many churches, whether it's their website, their bulletin, or their group emails or whatever, we think that we're all writing Moby Dick or something like that. Like, everyone needs to read these sacred words, right? It's like, well, what's the outcome that you're going for? Well, I want people to read the email so they don't so that they bring their paperwork to our first confirmation meeting. They bring their kids' baptismal certificate. Okay, write that in 100 words and put baptismal certificate in bold. Send that out. But what they do is they send out multiple pages, and then they capitalize somewhere, something. And then the things that are capitalized are also bolded. And then half of the stuff that's bolded is also in red. And I'm like, this is...
Can't do that. Got to pick one. Bold, italics. Can't pull all the tricks.
You can't. And when you do, it better be the 4th of July. Like, that word that you bold, italicize, underline, and red had better be the most important word that you have ever said to a human person, because that's all they're going to see. Or it looks like you're a toddler and you took Crayola to your email, right? And just yesterday, I had someone, they wrote an email for me for an event that we were doing, and I saw it, and I was like, this is 2 pages long. And it's just a list. It's a list, and the whole list is bold. And the last 3 things on the list are not just bold, but they're red. The whole thing, not a word, not a thing to jump out. And I just walked up to that person. I said, when you emphasize everything, you emphasize nothing, right? When you emphasize everything, the U.S. NASA figured this out a couple years ago, because all their warning labels on things in the space shuttle are all in caps, and it's required by federal law to put it all in caps. And all these accidents were happening. And the reason being, when you see a label in all caps, your eyes just see a block.
Yeah.
They don't see words. Like, out of the corner of your eye, you don't see, like, so when everything's capital, because they're all the same line height, right? They're all uniform. And it's like, wow, so you're doing your emails over what the biggest bureaucracy in the universe has decided doesn't work for them. So that's rant ended.
If it's longer than 3 sentences, it should be a phone call.
Yeah.
Well, we probably have time for one more question. So this is just your opportunity to say, if you could tell like any parish leader what they should do to be more successful and bring more people into communion with Jesus Christ, what would it be?
Walk around your parish every day praying. Walk like you're doing a patrol. Pray for the Lord to send souls. Right. It's the most important thing you can do. You want to be faithful to you want to realize that the work is God's, it's not yours. I started doing that, and I had a person an hour and a half away in Pearland drive up to my parish. He actually worked for NASA. Drive up to my parish and say, God told me to come to St. Anthony of Padua and become Catholic. He was a Hindu.
That's
right.
Awesome.
Like, and if that were the only story, I would be like, making it up. Gormley's making it up. Walk, pray the rosary.
Yeah.
Pray for the Lord to send you souls, because then you realize it ain't you and your clever plot twists in your talks, right? It's him. He's sovereign. It's his grace. Look, we need to. I think that's the most powerful thing we can do.
I like it.
People to join you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like it, man. Well, Gomer, thanks so much. It's been a blast talking with you. I wish we could have like another hour or 2 to talk, and we'd love to have you back sometime just to I don't know. This is fun. It's really enjoyable talking with somebody. I feel like we think about the church alike. We think about ministry alike. And so please count on our prayers for everything you're doing at St. Anthony and with your burgeoning number of podcasts. We hope they're all super successful. And if we can ever do anything for you, just let us know, man.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. God bless you all.
God bless you too, buddy. Bye.
All right, bye.